The sharp crack of a gunshot rang out across the valley, startling a flock of birds into flight from the treetops. Tom Grayson, a tough, weather-beaten rancher with a steady gaze, snapped his head toward the distant noise. He recognized the sound of his own rifle when he fired it to ward off coyotes, but this shot wasn't his. His dog, Scout, barked furiously near the fence line. Tom grabbed his weathered hat, rushed out the back door, and stopped dead in his tracks. There she was, Lydia Harper, the notorious HOA president, standing on his land with a clipboard in one hand and a silver starter pistol in the other. "I'll call the sheriff," Tom warned, his voice low and edged with steel. "You're in violation," Lydia yelled back, brushing off his threat. "That fence of yours is a hazard to the neighborhood. I've already reported you." Tom's eyes narrowed. His ranch had stood here long before the sprawling suburban neighborhood sprang up, a sea of identical houses and flimsy mailboxes. The HOA's rules didn't apply to his property, but that never stopped Lydia from meddling. From griping about the shade of his barn to complaining about his roosters crowing, she always had a grievance. Now, she'd crossed a line by trespassing and firing a gun. "Get off my land," Tom said icily, stepping forward. Scout growled at Lydia's feet, and she flinched back. "You can't threaten me," she snapped. "I'm the HOA president. If you don't tear down that fence, I'll have the county out here with bulldozers. You take one more step toward that fence, and I'll have Sheriff Carter here before you can finish scribbling on that clipboard," Tom shot back. Lydia smirked. "Good. Call him. Let's see what he thinks of your illegal animal pen." Tom blinked. "What?" "Yeah," Lydia said, her grin growing. "I told the police you're keeping dangerous animals back there. Maybe even exotic ones. Wolves, who knows?" Tom couldn't believe his ears. "You're insane." "You'll see," she sneered, turning on her heel and strutting back to her SUV, clutching her clipboard like a prize. An hour later, the police rolled in, 4 squad cars, 2 animal control trucks, and a game warden, their vehicles lining the road like a crime scene. Tom stood with his arms crossed, his expression hard as granite. Lydia watched from her driveway, smug, phone in hand, likely gloating to her HOA cronies online. A burly officer named Officer Hayes approached. "We got a call about dangerous animals." Tom nodded toward Lydia's house. "She's got a wild imagination." Hayes glanced at the game warden, then waved his team to check the property. They inspected the fences, the barn, and the corral while Scout barked excitedly at their heels. After a thorough search, they regrouped on Tom's porch. "Sir," Hayes said, clearing his throat, "unless this dog's secretly a wolf, we've got nothing." Tom chuckled. "Scout's a terror, loves belly rubs and chasing butterflies." The officers laughed, but Lydia stormed over, furious. "You didn't check his house?" she barked. Hayes's smile vanished. "Ma'am, without evidence of actual danger, we're done here." "You're making a mistake," Lydia shouted. "He's hiding something." The officers left, but Tom knew she wouldn't quit. Sure enough, the next day, Lydia returned, this time with a health inspector in tow. She pointed dramatically at Tom's cattle pen like she'd uncovered a scandal. "His cows are a biohazard," she screeched. The inspector, clearly uncomfortable, checked anyway. Tom's livestock was healthy, his ranch pristine. The inspector apologized and left. Lydia, undeterred, spat. "You're lucky they didn't dig deeper." "I'm not done." That night, Tom spotted her sneaking around his property, hammering stakes into the ground to mark fake boundary lines stretching deep into his ranch. By morning, she was back, waving a forged HOA map. "Your land's part of the HOA now," she declared smugly. Tom snatched the paper, seeing the sloppy red lines she'd drawn. "I'll see you in court," he growled. Things escalated when Lydia called the cops again, claiming Tom had threatened her with a gun. 3 squad cars arrived, and Tom was told to sit on his porch while officers questioned her. Lydia played it up, clutching her necklace and fake sobbing. "He aimed a shotgun at me. Said he'd shoot if I came back." Tom shook his head. "Never happened." "Quiet." An officer snapped, tense as Lydia rambled. Sheriff Carter, a veteran lawman who'd known Tom for years, arrived and sized up the scene. "Ma'am," he said calmly to Lydia, "mind if I check the security cameras?" Lydia froze. I don't think that's necessary." "Well," Carter replied, "Tom's got cameras. Should clear this up quick." Lydia's bravado collapsed. She mumbled excuses, but the footage showed her sneaking onto Tom's land the previous night, planting fake markers, then staging her assault. "Ma'am," Carter said sternly, "you're under arrest for filing a false report, trespassing, and fraud." Lydia paled as handcuffs clicked shut. "But I'm the HOA president," she wailed. "Tell it to the judge," Carter muttered. Tom watched from his porch as she was hauled away, Scout wagging his tail like he'd won a prize. Tom figured that'd be the end of it, but 2 weeks after her release, flyers popped up around the neighborhood, bold red warnings about dangerous livestock and illegal construction on Tom's ranch, signed by Lydia. She'd even tucked one into his gate. That afternoon, Tom took it to Sheriff Carter. "She's got too much time," Carter sighed, shaking his head. "Can't arrest her for nonsense, but I'll talk to her." Tom wasn't convinced. Soon after, he found new stakes on his land, orange paint marking a fake boundary, and signs reading private property, HOA regulated. Lydia had tried to steal his land outright. He confronted her at her house. "You're trespassing," she said smugly before he could speak. "Move that fence by week's end, or I'll sue." "This ranch has been here 40 years, Tom said, voice tight. "My family owned it before your neighborhood existed. I've got deeds to prove it." Lydia tapped her temple. "There's a clerical error. Your land's under HOA jurisdiction now. You'll comply." "You can't be serious," Tom growled. "Oh, I am," she sneered. "I won't let some stubborn rancher turn my neighborhood into a dump." Tom stormed home, dug through old records, and confirmed his land was his own. At the county clerk's office, the clerk frowned at Lydia's updated map. "This isn't right. Someone's tampered with it." Tom wasn't shocked. "We'll file a report," the clerk said, "but it'll take weeks." Lydia didn't wait. She rallied HOA board members, claiming Tom's ranch was a health hazard. Health department trucks arrived days later, Lydia gleefully pointing out non-existent filth. "He's burning trash back there," she shrieked. An inspector glanced at Tom. "See any fires?" Tom asked. "Nope," the man replied. "Just a clean ranch." They tested everything: water, soil, feed, and found nothing. "Stop wasting our time," one snapped at Lydia as she fumed. That night, Tom heard footsteps outside. Scout growled, and Tom grabbed his shotgun. He chased a shadowy figure from his cattle pen, but lost them. By morning, garbage, bottles, rotting food, bags, was strewn across his land, a spray-painted hazard sign in the middle. Lydia's work, no doubt. Sheriff Carter took a report. "She's getting bold," he muttered. 2 days later, a stranger in a suit photographed Tom's barn. "HOA attorney," the man said, handing Tom a notice to tear it down for violating design standards. Tom laughed bitterly. "This isn't legal." The attorney sighed. "I'm just the messenger." Tom gathered evidence, maps, deeds, photos, and filed it with the county court, Sheriff Carter by his side. At the hearing, Lydia strutted in with her fake map and wild claims about diseased cattle. The judge wasn't amused. "Mrs. Harper, your evidence is baseless. Tampering with records is a crime." Her case was tossed, and Carter warned her to back off. She sneered, "I'll get rid of him." The next morning, Tom's phone buzzed relentlessly, neighbors warning him Lydia was now claiming he'd assaulted her. Sheriff Carter arrived with 2 officers. "She says you grabbed her and threatened her with a knife." Tom showed his footage, him grilling and playing with Scout, never leaving his land. Lydia paced her driveway on her phone. "She's burying herself," Carter chuckled. Then, a neighbor's footage sealed it, Lydia planting a sign on Tom's fence, then calling 911 with her lie. At the station, Carter played it for her. She stammered, but he arrested her again. False reporting, trespassing, evidence tampering. "This isn't over," she screamed as Tom watched her hauled off. Her downfall snowballed. At the next HOA meeting, residents ousted her, fed up with her tyranny. An investigation revealed she'd embezzled HOA funds for luxuries, spa trips, handbags, a community retreat cruise. Fraud and theft charges piled up, and her story hit the news. Peace returned to Tom's ranch. The new HOA president, a quiet man named Henry, apologized and promised no more trouble. Tom hosted a barbecue, and the neighborhood came together, laughter, music, and unity replacing Lydia's chaos. "Thought you'd move out," Carter teased over a drink. "Nah," Tom grinned. "This land's mine." She couldn't scare me off. Tom eyed his ranch, thinking of a farm stand. Eggs, honey, chili. With Lydia gone, he figured the HOA wouldn't mind. As the sun set, he sipped his drink, scratched Scout's ears, and smiled. "We're staying, boy." Scout barked happily. For the first time in ages, everything felt right.